using this roll-lock disc and this Scotch-Brite style disc that I burned up pretty good. I was able to get the rear calipers and caliper brackets cleaned up where they needed to be and compressed with a C-clamp, and both of the rear brakes are done. Everything is torqued down and I can call the rear together. So I have to get some new wheel seals for the inside seals tomorrow morning from the parts store, and then I'm going to pack the front bearings and replace the rotors. And this side, the driver's side, needs new studs. I'll press those out and press them back in while I've got everything apart and cleaned up. And I don't know if I'll get to it before the big show this year or not, but the truck did come with enough hardware to finish holding all those boards down. I don't know why it wasn't done before, but hey, that's that. All right, so yesterday we finished up the rear. We got the brakes done. I checked the oil in the rear end. That's good. And got the tires back on. Everything's put back together. Now, the front, I'm gonna do a grease job on the bearings today. I've got to clean all of the mating surfaces for the calipers and the brackets. There and there. And that slide pin as well. And then doing a grease job and brakes. I can't believe how irregular and worn, or the rust patterns on that are. It's just crazy. So I've got a new rotor on this side, and I splurged for a bearing packing tool. Typically I just use my palms and smack the grease in, but that's kind of messy and wasteful. I figured as much grease jobs as I'm doing lately, I'll just do it like that. So I've got some high temp Valvoline grease. I've got a new packer, and those are my seals. And the seal is kind of a kit to where there's just a seal ring that goes on here that holds the bearing in place right there, and then the actual rubber seal is on the spindle. So I've got new of those. The bearings are all good and tight, but I just want to do a new grease job. The grease that's in there stinks and it's dark. So I can only believe that it's going to be a good improvement to get some fresh grease in there. Okay, so I've got my outer bearing packed. My inner bearing is packed and the new steel is driven in. And the brake disc is on. And this whole area has been cleaned up. I installed the new inner seal. I ground all the surfaces, the wear surfaces on the caliper, and everything is ready for assembly. I'm going to put the spindle all back together and get the castle nut and the dust seal on the outside. Then I'll compress my caliper and brake clean everything and assemble. Here we go. I got this top kingpin loose, and you can see it wiggling. You can see that hub or that spindle wiggling on the kingpin. Those bushings are shot. So I've got another set coming. It's no big deal, I guess. So I'm at the point of getting this kingpin out, and I have heated the axle, and I have put all of the weight of the truck, or the front end, on that socket and beat to where that chain is on that axle, and nothing will move. So everything's still pretty hot, but I'm going to try this method. I've used this to straighten the axle or the back beam of my buggy before, and it's essentially just wrapping a chain around the jack and then around whatever object you're trying to move, so that way the front end of the truck can't keep coming up. It has to use hydraulic pressure like a press. So we're going to see if this works. Okay, here we go. Jeez. Golly. That's a lot of pressure and nothing's moving. Nothing's moving at all. Hello, I'm here, I'm in the shop, and I have a brand new tank of oxygen. I've got plenty of acetylene, and I have a brand new rosebud torch tip that is as big as the gas supply said my torch system should support. I've got one next size smaller, but I'm just gonna go for broke and get that big one out. So I've got my googles on, I've got some gloves for my patties, and I've got all the pressure off the jack. I've got the chain out of the way, and I'm gonna see how hot, how red I can get this thing glowing and see if I can get that pin to move. Because otherwise, my other option, my last option, is pull the whole front axle and bring it to a local spring shop that said that they can do the job. But I have a feeling they've just got a stronger press and or more heat than I do. So I'm gonna go for broke and get this taken care of. Watch this. It's finally starting to move. I'm getting winded. My hands are on fire, but I can't stop. I'm pretty sure once this starts moving, I'm good to go. But I might have overheated it. I might have got that pin all swelled up too. I don't know. But it's moving, so time to go. Time to get to work. Ah! I won. There it is. Got it out. Only took a couple cycles with the torch. I ended up actually having to go to the smaller one because my acetylene tank started to not be able to support the big one. But I was able to make enough heat that I finally gave it a good whack with the sledgehammer, and it started going. It was popping like an inch at a time. I ended up having to jack the truck back up and put another couple sets of 1/2-inch extensions in there. And man, it just popped right out. A couple hits with the hammer, jack and hit, and jack and hit, and there it is. It's completely off. It's time to go cool down, dry off a little bit. Okay, now that this is all cooled down, I had a lunch break and a motorcycle ride with my lady. The whole spindle assembly got needle scaled and cleaned up in the parts washer, and old bushings were pressed out with the press, new bushings pressed in, and now I'm going to use a brake cylinder hone and continuous flow from the parts washer and hone these bushings to fit the pin. So this is my 3-stone hone. This is my pin that clearly does not fit. And from what I read, it takes about 10 minutes per bushing with this hone. But I'm just going to keep going up and down just like you would hone an engine cylinder, and keep it good and true. I'm going to keep this fluid flowing on it while I run the hone and just keep checking it every 30 seconds or a minute. Well, my plan to ream that out worked very well. And I also took the stone and just kissed the inside of this axle, just barely, and it was just enough to take some of the rust out, and that pin just slides in real beautiful. There was one shim there on top, and then there's a bearing below the spindle, so all the weight rides on that bearing. I think I'll pack the new one full of grease with the grease packer before I assemble everything. But basically what I have to do now is I have to put my seals on the inside of these bushings because the caps seal the outside, and then kind of start assembling and figure out what I need for shims on the top of the axle. You can see the old one sitting right there where it came out. So bearing on bottom, shims on top, just to keep everything good and snug. There's not supposed to be any play vertically, and there shouldn't be any play, laterally on the pin either, because these bushings are good and tight. There, that is a thing of beauty. It's good and tight. It swivels well. It's ready for grease caps, top and bottom with seals, and I'll grease it, pack it real well, and then it's time to actually start assembling this brake system. I got to put the backing plate back on, and the steering arm, and all of that, of course, and then that inner axle seal, and then grease the bearings. I've got to put the 5 studs in the hub, wherever that went, and I'm sure I'm missing something, but put a wheel on after I do the brakes. I'm using my big old monster vintage press to push these studs in. It's going to save a whole lot of time, and I'm done swinging hammers for a while. So I'm just going to use the press and let it ratchet and use force to get those studs where they need to be. Right when you think you can't do anything dumber, you go ahead and do something like that. Man, I just wrecked 2 brand new wheel studs. It's not about the money, it's about the time. Ugh. That is an aggravating feeling when it's after 5 and everybody in town can order you one for tomorrow. Well, I want it right now. I want to drive this truck. That's terrible. Well, thanks to my Napa hub uptown, I was able to find 2 replacements. So I'm going to schmuck those old ones out, the old new ones, and replace them with good ones with good threads. And watch what I'm doing this time.